Good evening, good morning, good afternoon, good whatever it is, wherever you are self-isolating, which I hope you're doing because, there's that thing that's going on out there in the world in general, and it's getting worse here in the United States that YouTube doesn't like us to talk about. So we're going to
Good evening, good
mention it
morning, good
once
afternoon, good whatever it is, wherever
after we
you
turn
are
down the volume on my
self-isolating.
own preview here. There we go. Um, but
Good
welcome
evening, good
once
morning, good
again
afternoon, good whatever it is, wherever
to yet another this week's edition of Nerd Week Live, brought to you by the folks at Nerd Caliber. This week, I am the folk at Nerd Caliber. The rest of the team is doing their own self-isolating, quarantining, dealing with issues that are related to the. I think this is the one time we're going to say it, because I think you get once or one, maybe two. Dealing with the coronavirus outbreak and the concerns for all of that. And I have to say, our news part of it is about that because that's news all around the world, but it also affects, sadly, the nerd community, us, all of us. So we are going to be talking about that. Um, we, of course, here at Nerd Caliber, will be bringing you all sorts of interesting stuff throughout the course of the next few weeks, which will mostly not be related to upcoming conventions because there aren't going to be that many upcoming conventions, at least in the next 2 to 3 weeks. Our own products, our own events, we have two coming up. The Cosplay and Photography Expo itself is July 18th and 19th. Valentina, welcome to the show. July 18th and 19th, and I am I'm 100% confident that it will not be a problem at that point. Shoto Todoroki, welcome to the show. But we also have an event, sort of a free photo shoot weekend that we do every year in May in Cape Cod, and that's in the middle of May. And right now, all of the restrictions that are currently in place on large gatherings and so on are supposed to expire more than a month before our next event happens, the one in May 15th. Valentina, I'm sorry, I don't speak or read that, so I'm going to say I hope it was something wonderful. Or pleasant. But there is the possibility all restrictions may get extended or even get worse. And so there's a possibility that our event in may have to be reconsidered. Right now, again, fingers crossed, everything looks like it's going to happen, that we won't have to worry about that. But we'll see. But as far as the Cosplay and Photography Expo, Mansfield, Mass, July 18th and 19th, that is, it's got to be on, where people will start rioting in the streets. Not about our event, but just about the length of time that people are going to have to be asked to self-isolate or quarantine. But we're going to jump right into the news then, and it's been a week where obviously everything in the news has been mostly dominated by the news about what's going on outside there in the world. I will have to say, I'm here in my home studio, right 20 minutes north of Boston in Massachusetts. And if you know anything about Boston, you know that today was, of course, St. Patrick's Day in Boston, and all the bars are closed. That's bad enough. And then this morning, Tom Brady announced he was going to be leaving the Patriots. So if you hear sirens go by outside the window, it's probably just somebody jumping off a cliff. And pardon me, I have allergies. That wasn't what you think. Sometimes you got to make that clear. Get my mic out here so I can mute the next time I cough. Anyway, so our first topic, we're going to get right into the topics here, and it'll probably go by pretty quickly, is all of the things that have been affected by what's going on out there. One of the first things to get put off was a bunch of movies on the Disney slate. Mulan was certainly one of them. Mulan, The New Mutants, a whole bunch of other movies. What was the other ones? Antlers, which is a Fox Searchlight horror movie, have all been moved off to points in the future at an indeterminate date. They haven't picked a time. They're saying they're hoping to reschedule in 2020. So that doesn't really sound terribly like terribly good news that they're not even sure that it's going to be in this coming year that they'll get to reschedule these. But that's not the only thing that's been affected. We had news that The Witcher shut down its production. It was filming in Prague, and they had to shut down because there was literally all the museum, everything was shut down. So they had essentially no support mechanism around them whatsoever to be able to film the show. And if that wasn't bad enough, one of the newest cast members coming into season 2, Tormund Giantsbane, everybody's favorite, extremely lovesick ginger, Christopher Heavue, I'm sure I'm butchering his last name, as the actor, he actually came down with that particular sickness of which we should not talk, according to Google's algorithm. So he is now being checked out. He's self-isolating. He's self-quarantining, and it's not good out there in the entertainment world. And in case you're wondering, he's playing a character called Nivellen, which I haven't read the novels, and it seems like he's a character from the novels. I don't recall the character appearing in the game, or at least I've only played The Witcher 3. And he definitely is not in The Witcher 3. But if you look on the wiki, it kind of tells you what the character is all about, and I don't want to talk about that because I'm guessing that would be a spoiler for people who haven't read the books and are looking forward to what Tormund Giantsbane is going to do or be in The Witcher if and when it comes. Well, when it comes out, of course it will. There's no if there. It's a when. But also along those lines, we just got after a couple of days, I will have to say, of speculation about it happening, confirmation that Black Widow has been put off again indefinitely. No rescheduled date picked yet. And the reason for a lot of these, particularly Black Widow, being rescheduled is that there's no place to show them. The news also came out fairly recently that AMC has joined Regal, which announced a few days ago, that they are shutting down all their theaters. You're not going to be sitting in a theater with a whole bunch of other nerds watching a nerd movie and possibly, spreading that particular problem around from people to people. At least not at AMC theaters or at Regal. I'm not really sure. I haven't read about Showtime. I know Alamo Drafthouse is shutting down. There's no place to show the movies, even if you did have them scheduled to drop anytime in at least the next 3 to 4 weeks. And with Black Widow coming up in just May 1st, they were probably anticipating that it's going to go into May. So all of our nerd stuff is on hold. The happiest place in the world is you're not going to be that happy there because DisneyWorld, Disneyland, they all have shut down for just a couple of weeks. I will say that about them. They are not, as of yet, making long-term commitments to shutting down, to closing down the parks. They're doing that at least so far in a 2-week increment, and that may change after these 2 weeks are up. They may decide that they can either lift it, or they will decide. They'll have to decide. They can either lift it or they will extend it. I have a lot of friends who work where at the House of the Mouse down in Orlando, the Orlando version, and I wish the best for them. I really want them to to do well. Most of them live in Disney housing. Disney puts up the people that work there, and if they shut down, who knows where those people will go? Who knows where they may be told to go? Fingers crossed. Anyway, so that's pretty much it for all of the kind of awful news about all of our nerd fandom fun things not being able to be fun for quite a while. Um, and I don't need to tell you about the cons that have shut down. I believe that you've probably seen those if you're a convention person. But all around the world, certainly all across the United States and here in New England, um, cons are being postponed or outright canceled. I was to be the photo department manager for Anime Boston this year, in a wonderful deal that Anime Boston, offered to us, and then agreed to other things that I wanted for Nerd Caliber and the Cosplay and Photography Expo to be represented. And they were very accommodating, and things were going swimmingly to try to get a smoothly flowing photo department back online. Um, and now, no, there won't be one this year. Anime Boston won't happen until 2021. So, and there are all sorts of other cons, big and small, that have announced either postponements, like Queen City Kamikaze was the same weekend as Ace Comic Con. Ace Comic Con is first time that it was supposed to be here in the Northeast. Nope. They canceled. That was actually supposed to be next weekend. Um, yeah, like this coming weekend. Um, Also, supposedly this coming weekend was going to be one of my favorite little tiny cons, Queen City Kamikaze in Manchester, New Hampshire. They have postponed until they found a date in early May, the second weekend in May. So, good for them. Thank God that they found that available, and were able to pin it down and lock it in that quickly. But Queen City Kamikaze had to reschedule even. And again, let's hope all this stuff is lifted so that when it does come around, they can actually pull the show off. Because early May isn't that far away. So that's pretty much all of the, like I said, the negative Nancy news about all of the effect of this particular horrible thing that's happening around the world on the nerd scene, both locally here and all around entertainment. So now we're going to get into a couple of other things about in the nerd news, in the nerd community. And this one literally just dropped less than a half an hour before we went on the air. I had to scramble to get this. Luckily, I had this image already queued up in my old images file. That is, of course, from Shira and the Princesses of Power. And the news is Shira is packing it in at the end of this 5th season. That will be the final episodes will premiere May 15th. And once that 5th season drops on May 15th, that's it. So if you are, like so many people that I know, big fans of this wonderfully forward, progressive, and well-written animated series, in May, you're going to get your last shot at it. So kudos to them for pulling off something that was so well done and could potentially be so problematic in social media, and not letting any of the potential problematic comments, shall we say, that could have arisen about its themes of inclusiveness and gender identity get in the way. They just steamrolled right through all that and put out 5 seasons. So big ups to them, to the producers, to Netflix, and congratulations. I'm looking forward to these people coming up with something just as interesting and just as good down the road. But that's it. May 15th, the 5th and final season of Shira and the Princesses of Power drop, and get your Shira on at that point. Moving on to our next bit of news, and it's still not good. That's an image, of course, of Batwoman, the CW series, Ruby Rose as Batwoman, and the news is this series, which already caused an injury to Ruby Rose in its filming, just had an injury, an accident on set that has left a production assistant paralyzed from the waist down. That is really awful news. Awful news for her and her family, of course. They film in British Columbia, so something called the Workers' Compensation Board of British Columbia, or WorkSafe BC, is the entity that has launched an investigation. And while it doesn't sound particularly good for this woman, whose name is Amanda Smith, fingers crossed that she recovers, that she at least recovers some, if not, fingers crossed she recovers all function out of this horrible accident. But Greg Berlanti's Berlanti Productions, which does all of the CW DC shows, has had a pretty close to spotless track record up to this point. So having one show that seems to be having problems would indicate that there might be a problem at some sort of safety planning or staffing level when it comes to stunts or production issues with equipment or something. I'm not saying that somebody has to be fired, but all of his other shows don't seem to be having this problem. And they are also effects and action-heavy shows. If Stephen Amell hasn't injured himself in however many seasons of Arrow, and nobody on the set has been injured like this on Arrow, then having injuries happen twice on Batwoman, I would look into somebody whose job it is to make sure that doesn't happen and see whether or not they're not doing their job. But I'm not in charge of that. I'm not Greg Berlanti. God knows I'm not Greg Berlanti, who's rich at this point with all his Warner Brothers deals. But if I were anybody like that, I would start calling people onto the carpet and doing interviews. Put it that way. But fingers crossed for Ms. Smith that she gets better somehow. Now, our last two stories, and I think we're going to wrap this up within a half an hour. There's not that much out there other than the big story that YouTube doesn't want us to talk too much about. But this is cool. In his work promoting Bloodshot, review up on nerdcaliber.com as we speak by the wonderful Byron D0, who couldn't be here tonight because he was having router issues, darn it. Get those fixed, Byron. I know you can do it. So read the review of Bloodshot. I won't give you any spoilers or anything, but it almost pulls itself out of mediocre. Kind of a surprise. But Vin Diesel was doing an interview about promoting Bloodshot. Somebody wisely asked him about Guardians of the Galaxy, and he dropped this particular bomb that there will be members of the Guardians of the Galaxy in Thor 4. And of course, that is the Guardians from their original lineup that's in front of you there on the screen. He didn't say who or which or what members. Since he dropped the line, you would assume that it's probably going to be Groot. So it might be Groot and Rocket. Although I don't know that paying Bradley Cooper money or Vin Diesel money for that matter for them to run around in suits and then do voiceovers. But again, it's Guardians of the Galaxy. It's Disney. Disney has more money than anything on the planet. Luminous, welcome to the show. Luminous arrived late because his wife had him searching online for toilet paper. Good luck, Luminous. Godspeed to you that you are able to successfully navigate the choppy waters, if you'll pardon that expression when we're talking about toilets, and get that TP that you need. Remember, buy responsibly. Don't go crazy. make sure that the people who actually really might need this sort of stuff, like large families and families that aren't loaded with money, are able to buy their stuff. I know you would. I'm just saying that in general. Um, but Luminous, we're on to our last topics, our last two topics, and so there's not a lot out there, as you might have gathered, for us to talk about for Nerd News that isn't related to that big health thing that YouTube doesn't like us to talk about specifically by name. So right now we're talking about Guardians and the fact that Vin Diesel let slip that at least a few of the Guardians of the Galaxy will be in Thor 4 or Thor Love and Thunder. And he also said that in the next time you see Groot, and he said, the way he'll describe it is 2 words: Alpha Groot. So we don't know what version of Groot could look more alpha than the one that can, spread all his fingers out and skewer dozens of guards at once. But I'm looking forward to it, whatever it's going to be. And my speculation is that it's going to be Groot and Rocket that's going to be in Love and Thunder. But Gunn or Taika Waititi could pull a big surprise on us, and it could be all of them. It could be all of them in a short bit. It could be Groot and Rocket as sort of a Thor team up. Hemsworth has proven that he does really well with a team up. Out of Thor Ragnarok, certainly, where it works really well for him to play off of somebody, both for drama and for comedy. So whoever's in it from the Guardians could be in the whole thing, which I wouldn't object to. I like the way Taika Waititi takes that Thor and somebody else dynamic and works it. So fingers crossed, whatever they do, I'm sure it's going to be fun. But let's hope for all the Guardians. I'd like them all at least to be in there for a bit. So that was that piece of good news. The next piece of good news, I guess, is we got our first look finally at what will be what they're calling Avengers Campus, which is specifically the Avengers MCU part of the Disney theme parks. And of course, this is the Avengers HQ building with a Quinjet on the top. All of these are obviously artist renditions because they haven't actually started building these things yet, which means that we don't have to worry about not getting to them while Disney is in fact closed down. Lumina says, seems like all films and TV shows are shut down. Yeah, we got into that in the first part of the show. We listed a bunch of them. We also talked about the fact that The Witcher was shut down, and Christopher Hivju, Tormund Giantsbane from Game of Thrones, who is playing a new character in Season 2 of Witcher, actually has contracted that particular, or tested positive for the vector of that particular disease we don't talk about. So fingers crossed that he gets better. But this Avengers Campus, you look anywhere. Of course, Good Morning America had the initial release because it's ABC, which is owned by Disney. But now articles are all over the place that show the various pictures that were put out there. They're tying it into the Black Widow movie, which has been postponed, as we talked about earlier, because the Taskmaster will be the first supervillain that will, as they put it, invade Avengers Campus. There's apparently a new technology that allows riders on one of the experience type rides to shoot webs just like Spider-Man, and I'm kind of interested to see how that's going to actually work out. If you go to any of these sites and you play the clip stuff that was on GMA or Good Morning America, you can kind of see what it is that they're going for, but that doesn't mean that's exactly what's going to happen. According to Spider-Man and Iron Man will sport all new exclusive suit designs. And yes, there will be shawarma. Awesome. I'm looking forward to getting there someday and having shawarma. I mean, I can get shawarma right in Boston, but having shawarma there at the Avengers Campus. It's really a great design. I'm really looking forward to how they pull it off. they've just knocked it out of the park. Obviously, with the Star Wars, what are they calling it? Something Galaxy. Um, anyway, the Star Wars part of the Disney World theme park down there in Florida, and I'm 100% positive they will knock it out of the park with this as well. Not a lot of companies out there that nail theme park experience designs quite so well as the House of the Mouse, which we also mentioned is shut down for at least 2 weeks. Hopefully no more than that, but who knows? With the guidelines out there, who knows how things will change from moment to moment. So even a show that was supposed to be only about half about this particular thing that's going on out there, it's kind of tough to not have most of it about it. And we've got nothing else in particular to say about it. We probably, because we don't want to, because we've probably already demonetized this. Can't help it. It's the topic of the day. Other than, take it seriously, folks. I'm almost exactly 1 month away from 60, which technically puts me in a month in the in danger category. And like everybody else, all you young'uns out there, I don't feel like I'm going to be in danger. That doesn't mean it's not true. I don't want any of my relatives of my age, my friends of my age, to have to face dealing with this. I don't want anybody having to face dealing with this because realistically, even if you're young and you get it, the effects on your lung capacity are not good after recovery. Don't take my word for that. Go look it up. It is, if you're young and you heal fast and well, it'll take months at least for you to, with rehab and exercise, for you to come back to full lung capacity, or as close to it as you can get. So don't think this is just the flu. It's not. It has long-lasting and in some cases permanent, not just death permanent, because obviously that's permanent, after effects or lasting effects. So take it seriously, folks. Do what the CDC tells you. Do what your state and local officials have told you. Massachusetts has not gotten to the point of issuing any kind of a shelter in place or lockdown like certain parts of California have. And the governor says right now that's not on the table. But if the restrictions and programs that are put into place to keep a spike from happening, which would absolutely cripple our healthcare system, and as they say, flatten that curve, if that doesn't work, a lockdown's going to happen. So follow those rules, follow those guidelines, be safe, wash them hands. If you have to be out, there are plenty of people who cannot work from home, and God bless you for putting up with the idiots that are out there in the stores being idiots and putting people in danger by overbuying. But if you have to be out there, if that's your job, please be safe. Wash your hands. Sure, you use hand sanitizer. That's great. Nothing beats washing your hands vigorously. That actual mechanical action gets stuff off your skin, soap or not. Now, you use soap because it also destroys the outside layer of this particular virus. So, yay soap. But do the right thing. Be safe. Don't panic. Don't panic buy. Don't panic anything. But listen to what is being suggested you do or ordered to do, such as restaurants that are being shut down, and be safe. So please, folks, be safe out there. One thing I can say about cons, and I will say about cons, there have been a number of wonderful online efforts by various people to try to mitigate the effects on small independent artists and vendors of having their sources of income, the conventions, shut down by creating virtual online conventions or artist alleys or so on. Emerald City Comic Con was one of the first one with ECCC online. Check out that hashtag on various things to find out how to get to that. Our cosplay and photography panelist, longtime panelist Dave Yang, has created a wonderful virtual artist alley, and you can find that group on Facebook just by typing virtual artist alley. It'll be the first thing that comes up. And in which he is taking posts from people who want something to buy and matching them up with people who have stuff to buy, who were supposed to be at these cons and now can't. So check those out, folks. If you're bored, if you're sitting at home, if you're self-isolated, and you're just jonesing because you can't get out to a con, and buy those fan art prints or plushy Yodas or whatever it is that you want to buy. I probably shouldn't have said that. Disney's probably going to come after me now. But anyway, check those out. ECCC online, Virtual Artist Alley Facebook group, and there are others. Just do searches for that concept. What will I be watching this week, Luminous? I'm not really going to be changing my plans. I'm doing mostly freelance work these days. So I always have worked from home, or I have for the last 6 years or so. So that hasn't changed for me necessarily. And what I generally do, because I try to spread out, any freelance work, any sort of school work. I'm doing Gail Simone's Comics School on Twitter, which is wonderful. If you want to try to learn how to be a comics writer, check that out. Hashtag Comics School, all one word. It's amazing. Absolutely fantastic information dumps every day. There's not one today because she skipped today. Every day that's going to go until I think tomorrow. With homework. You have to sit there and type, write some stuff out. That's a lot of fun. But when I watch stuff, I usually watch something that I can also then be doing either freelance work or my Nerd Caliber work. And so I don't binge a lot of stuff. I haven't binged anything in a while. It's not true. I binged the first 8 episodes of the new anime ID Invaded, or id Invaded, I think, or could go either way. Because somebody recommended it to me as being Azumi. It's wonderful seeing you at PAX East. As one of her favorite animes and of the season, and I've been kind of sort of sitting on it going, I'm not really sure I like this premise, and it's amazing. It's fantastic. So that was the only thing that I binged. I watch a lot of YouTube because they're easily digestible chunks that can be watched in between going back to my laptop and doing some sort of work. But that's pretty much it. That, and regularly I'm watching a number of anime series. I'm watching Star Trek Picard, but you don't have to binge that. That's every Thursday. Star Trek Picard is amazing, despite one really awful acting episode. But that's anyway. Yeah, that's it. Animes, certainly ID Invaded, certainly My Hero Academia. I got to stay up with what's happening there. Again, I don't want to go on a rant, and there's nothing else to talk about, but I'm going to compare the writing of My Hero Academia and Fairy Tail. And in My Hero Academia, we see all of the students, but particularly Deku, show a progression of learning how to apply what he's learned about his ability, about his quirk, to new techniques every single season, multiple times in a season often. And so the Deku that we see here in Season 4 isn't anything like the Deku that we saw even at the end of Season 1. And again, frankly, none of the characters are, even if Bakugo is a little scumbag still. He's at least a scumbag that showed just a skosh of character awareness finally. Um, you go to Fairy Tail, and I stopped watching Fairy Tail after about episode 45. And I can't remember, that's like the fourth or fifth arc in or something. Because every arc, Natsu learns something that allows him to beat the villain, and then in the very next arc completely forgets that he had learned that new technique or ability. That they just ignore it. It's just written out. They don't, yeah. By the end of 5 or 6 arcs or whatever it was to get to episode 45, I'm literally throwing things at my TV, going, "Look, you learned how to stop that 3 arcs ago." Nope. So there's a comparison in the nature of writing long running episodic series that should display character growth. My Hero Academia does, and Fairy Tail doesn't, or didn't, and I'm certainly not willing to sit around through 6 arcs, essentially 2 full seasons worth of 0 character growth, even in intellect growth, even knowledge growth, of Natsu not learning stuff that he already learned. Luminous, Picard, yes, you're enjoying that as well. Yeah, it's really good. Performances are really good for the most part. The story is fantastic. I'm very interested to see how they tie some of this newer mythology coming in from the Romulan side into so much of the depth of content that's created over all of the Star Trek series, and they keep pinging little parts of previous elements from not only Next Generation but movies and other shows into whatever it is that they're building, and it's looking really interesting. I'm really liking it. And the characters are very complex. They're dropping F-bombs again, like they did in Discovery, because they can, but they've only got one character that does it. So I guess it's sort of like, oh, that's your swearing character. But it also has, much more so than Discovery did, it has, as they say, that sense of optimism that was missing from Discovery, that was a hallmark of Next Generation. And I think that's because they're writing Picard the way Picard has to be written. Yes, he is significantly more bitter than he was, but even that anger and bitterness at the Federation and what they've done doesn't change his basic nature and his optimistic nature. And good writing. As you can tell, I'm a fan of good writing. So anyway, thank you for asking those questions, Luminous. You stretched us out to another 8 minutes, or almost 10 minutes. So we're almost 40 minutes long here in a show that probably could have been wrapped up in 20. We'll see you next week, folks. Like I said, take this stuff serious. Don't panic, but do what you're told. Do what is being suggested to you. And be nice to people. Don't panic buy. Don't push people in lines. Don't steal from people's carts when they're turning around and looking at something, as I've heard multiple reports of. Just, you'll get the food you need. You might have to go to 2 or 3 different places. Don't worry about it. Anyway, that said, we'll see you folks next week, where hopefully we'll have a lot more nerd news and not so much nerd negative news, let's put it that way, about that whole thing that's out there. I'm Rodney Brown. I don't know if I did this at the beginning. I am the editor-in-chief at Nerd Caliber. I am first-person shooter on Facebook as a cosplay photographer. I am Burley_Adopter on Twitter as a tech journalist, and you can see all of our stuff on YouTube and go to nerdcaliber.com to read articles and reviews and so on. This won't be that many cosplay galleries because not going to be that many conventions coming up. We'll see you next week, folks. Thanks again for tuning in, and bye-bye.